We're all about electoral transparency and trust, bridging the gap between INEC and citizenry. And discussing this vital topic with me, starting from my immediate left, I have a political analyst and civil society activist, Christopher Ojekere. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Philip.
And next to Christopher Ojekere is a political analyst and also the convener of the Concerned Edo Citizens Forum, aka Voice of the Commoner. And he is Roy Olivabo. Thanks for coming, Roy.
Thank you for having me.
And joining us via Zoom is Barrister Matthew Idagese. Good morning, Matthew.
Good morning, Philip. Thanks for having me.
All right. So also joining us via Zoom from the United States of America is Ahmed Mamadou, a social media influencer and policy analyst. Good morning, Ahmed.
Good morning, Philip. Good morning, viewers.
Thank you for joining. And it's quite awesome to know that you had to, wake up from sleep in order to join this conversation. We appreciate you. All right, we quickly look at what has been happening so far. We've had the off-cycle elections, basically look at that transpired in Edo State and, of course, in Ondo State. What do you see as the preparedness of INEC in the electoral process in order to bring transparency? Chris, do you see them as really moving on to bring about a balance that will change the narrative?
Well, when we talk about preparedness, I would like to classify them. You can be prepared with respect to having what you may refer to as the technical infrastructure, like the beavers, the IRF portal, and even the personnel and the offices. But if you are not prepared in attitude to achieve an objective, to achieve a mandate and an agenda that your institution has set for you to achieve, whatever paraphernalia, physical infrastructure available to you, you will continually and serially fail in achieving that objective and agenda with every activity and exercise you perform. I don't see the current INEC under the current leadership of Mahmoud Yakubu, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, has been prepared in the sense of attitude to achieving elections that are reflexive of democracy. I don't see him as having a sense of purpose and any will at all, whether political or non-political, to leave a legacy and a name of an INEC that helped Nigeria to midwife successfully a transition to democracy. I don't see that at all. I think what he has just decided to do is to go with the tide and flow with the wind. The tide and wind of political actors, the tide and wind of he who pays the piper. So whichever way that wind takes him to, if there is credit at the end, he will take it. If there's no credit, he will just live through it. And unfortunately, serially, he's not delivering on credit. He's not able to show that he's the master of the process and that he has a deliberate, intentional objective to achieve and that he has mastered the institution to achieving it at every time he came out to conduct elections. And that is why he's always following every election with an apology. And I wrote an article about that just about 2 weeks ago. After every election, he will say, we have learned our lessons. But he goes to conduct another election. The same lessons he's supposed to have learned from the first are repeated. He has to learn the lessons all over again. And so he has created a huge feeling of discontent, a huge feeling of distrust and voter apathy in the nation. He's the most discussed topic now among civil society groups, political thinkers in the nation. And no one has been able to score that institution above 40%. Several infractions have been committed in every election, and each time he will say he will learn. By the time we do the other election, we have other things to also complain about. So I think that the way it is, and that is why the former head of state, General Olusegun Obasanjo, retired, spoke very recently, after he has had enough of this, that INEC leadership from the national down to the local government area should be reviewed. And I agree with that perfectly, because they've lost sense of direction, they've lost sense of purpose. And once you've lost sense of purpose, you just begin to wheel along. So I don't think there's anything that INEC, as we have it constituted, and by their antecedents right now, can offer Nigeria anymore.
Okay, I'll come back to you to give practical steps or factors you see as really responsible for the challenges that INEC is faced with. But again, to you, Roy, let's appreciate a level where we have the electoral process that is no longer as violent as it used to be, and having the leadership under Professor Mahmoud Yakubu. We've seen the off-cycle elections in Edo State, and of course that in Ondo State, security-wise, and of course having these electoral laws also coming in to mitigate the gap. Would you say there's been some improvement on the part of the leadership of Professor Mahmoud Yakubu in bringing about more electoral transparency?
Well, it's very sad that we are still discussing this issue. In 21st century, we cannot conduct an election that people will be proud of. You know, over the years, INEC, they will promise everyone deliver here, and they have not been able to give us that sense of direction to our politics and even political discourse. INEC, to me, I even find it difficult to even be discussing any institution in isolation. Because by the time you are discussing an institution in isolation, you are being unfair to them. It was in this program I said that we have come to that level where hustlers are now in position of authority. Any society where hustlers now preside and manage the resources for the people, there is nothing anybody can do about it. Therefore, I don't want us to be spending energy on discussing INEC under the hegemony of Yakubu. But what is paramount, and I believe that is very relevant, is that we should be discussing Nigeria in total. Because one, Nigeria as a country needs total overhauling. Those who are managing and presiding over us have not been able to demonstrate that patriotism that will make Nigeria to work. What can an INEC chairman do? What can he do in a scenario? His responsibility is to conduct election. By the time you see security forces are telling you, give me that result, and come with another ideology. And you are discussing about insecurity in election. We just watched the US election. Were they discussing about insecurity? For how long shall we continue to even be deploying 30,000 policemen to go and manage a state election? Of which benefit? Because our mindset, we see that election is a do or die affair. Why will you be deploying 30,000 policemen to a state because of election that is for one day? Does that not call for a deep sober reflection? That even we, the people, when I say the people, those who are managing us, they are seeing election as a do or die affair. What does it take? We can conduct election in Nigeria without mobilizing any policeman. If really we are serious in this country and we want to get it right. In the last election, the US election that just concluded, I was sitting there in my bedroom. I was monitoring it. And across the globe, people were monitoring that election. They were not bothered about deploying 1,000 or 2,000 policemen. But rather, it's about institutions that are working, society that are working, where people have genuine patriotism that their country will work. It's very unfortunate that as of today, those who find their way there, how are they going to make it to work? That's the reason why I laugh when I listen to the former president talking about total overhauling of the INEC. Who is going to overhaul the INEC? Those who are benefiting from the shenanigans and the gimmicks of INEC will now come back to come and restructure or overhaul INEC. The whole arrangement is not possible because some of them find themselves in position. They don't merit it. This is not the people who voted for them. It was in this maneuvering of INEC that they found themselves there. Then they will not go back. A man who you gave him a ladder to climb up is there now. You are telling him he should throw the ladder away when you know he have to come back. Election in Nigeria will not be free and fair until we, the people, take our destiny in our hand. Because those who were elected to the National Assembly are going to overhaul the system. They will not do that because if they do it, they will not be able to go back. Therefore, they will continue to romance and not those principles. That INEC in every election, INEC will come again and apologize. We will name new things. The more they are naming, the more they are unnaming. Then in any election, you see them before the election in Ondo State. I was in one of the sisters and I said, opposition have no business conducting election, contesting election in Ondo State. And I will also be, unless something is done gently, even in 2027, opposition have no business conducting election. If we want to be sincere and fair to ourselves, I see no reason why you are contesting an election, you know that you will not be able to win. Not that the people will not vote for you, but the system will not allow you to win. Therefore, you continue to go. I want the people of all those, all the political parties, and as a PDP, you are good as a party. What you need is not to contest election, because the power that bears are today will not give you. You very just say you listen to the national chairman of APC. He said Osun is next. From there we move to Oyo, and before you get to immediately after Edo, he said we are going to capture the southwest, and that is gradually manifesting. You are still telling me people will now go and sit down and say they are contesting the election. Why are you contesting? Why will Obasanjo be telling us at this material time that we should overhaul INEC? Who are those who are going to overhaul INEC? Is it you and I that are here? Those in the National Assembly will never think about that. They will never consider it as an issue. We will continue to wallow in this position we find ourselves. We continue to lament as if the book of Lamentation was written because of Nigeria. That is where we find ourselves. That is the reality, because I am a realist. I'm telling Nigeria, if we continue as in 2011, in 2027, just essentially I will not be bothered to even leave my room, because election that is already predetermined. Why investing so much?
Okay, I'll come back to you. Let's get a perspective of a legal practitioner, and Matthew Idarese. We'll look at what is always featuring on registers, where we have them in millions, 2-3 million registered voters. But by the time we get to the basics, where voters are churning out, we see a very minute number of them showing a great difference, in increased voter apathy. Now, how do we tackle this headlong, most especially the deficit that people seem to have, the trust deficit people seem to have on INEC? Do you see some factors responsible for this? And how can we make our laws, work in this regard to bridge the gap or mitigate the gap in order to have an INEC that will be functional, in meeting the yearnings and aspirations of the people, in performing transparent electoral, processes?
Yes, Mr. Philip. Just like Mr. Ariwabos highlighted it just now, INEC and electoral transparency cannot be discussed in isolation. INEC is not the sole factor for a credible election. The political actors have a very major role to play, and they have been playing those roles negatively. And the recruitment of talk to prosecute election is not done by INEC. That is the job of, that is the handiwork of the political class. They have perfected and institutionalized the means of recruiting talk at every election cycle. They arm this talk with a mandate to shortchange the process, unleash violence. We've seen all of that play out in every election cycle. Now, talking about deployment of large security forces. Yes, it is because the political actors are not ready to allow peace to hold during the electoral process. With the armed talk, if there are not enough supporting deployment, you will be loading dead bodies into the ballot box instead of ballot paper. A lot of killings will happen. So that is that. That is what has caused this deployment, massive deployment, to become a routine in every election cycle. And again, the people, the voters themselves, are not free of blame. There is no law that says you should buy and sell votes. But we have discovered over time that vote buying and vote selling have become a part of our electoral process. All political parties are involved in that. We see them in broad daylight. It's not secret. It's not hidden. Even as we do election the other day, I saw a woman saying they were paid and they have voted. So how do we pin that on INEC alone? So INEC has its own role to play, and they are not doing their best. But the
Well, Matthew, that is getting your point, but I want to believe that you still have the floor so that you can ventilate. But getting your point, let's look at, you said it's not right for us to discuss INEC in isolation because you understand that the political class has a role to play in making sure we change the narrative. Now, you also made mention of vote buying, for instance, and how do you see our electoral laws? Because we are yet to see prosecutions, follow through, in order to make sure that the culprits are prosecuted and made to face the full wrath of the law as regards vote buying and vote selling. What do you see as responsible? Because we have these laws, but they are not being performed to catch anyone.
exactly my point. We are not suffering we are not suffering from lack of laws. We are having a problem of not being able to enforce these existing laws. For instance, vote buying is a crime. It is punishable. But who will punish the offenders when everybody who are supposed to enforce these laws are part of the mischief and the crime? So if the sheriff is involved in the stealing, how do you expect to catch the thief? And again, electoral laws are sufficient today. It is not the insufficiency of the law that is the problem. It is the way to enforce those laws and the refusal to enforce them. Because those who would have enforced them are benefiting from the law. So this is our dilemma as a people. You cannot expect the law to enforce itself. We have the best laws in the world. If the enforcers are compromised, and those who are started with the duty to ensure that the enforcers do their job.
Thank you, Matthew. Let's get to you, Ahmed Mamadou. You heard what Barrister Matthew said. Now, we have the laws, but they are not functional because those who are supposed to enforce it have their own personal interest. And even when some are caught in vote buying, at the end of the day, they are left off the hook. Now, what do you see as a way to tackle this headlong? Ahmed Mamadou, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Ahmed?
Oh, yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
All right, I
I
said,
thought the other gentleman was speaking.
okay, what Matthew Idarese said was that we have these laws, but the challenge is that the people that are supposed to enforce it are not forthcoming because they have their personal interest. And the political class, he blamed the political class for the challenges we are having, for not being to prosecute all of this in order to serve as deterrent for others so that we can have an INEC that is truly independent and transparent. Do you concur?
So I think the premise on which some of these conversations are taking place, I disagree with them fundamentally. The premise, from what I gather, is that the will of the people has not been seen through the elections that we have recently. I completely disagree with that. I think one of the most outstanding institutions that has been built on our very young democracy, our democracy is barely 24 years old since 1999, is INEC. And in fact, the INEC has been improving with every election cycle that we've seen. The elections that we have currently are a far cry from the elections that we had in 1999, where basically all the votes were allocated and the results were announced. No, that's not what we have now. We do have issues still in our election cycle. We do have things that are going wrong, but by and large, the elections have reflected the popular will of the people, giving room for error with probably the margins of 10 to 20%. So essentially, these have been the will of the people. Now, with regards to who is going to enforce the electoral laws, yes, there has been a lot of challenges, but I do not think that our elections have been so woeful to the point where we will say that they don't reflect the will of the people, and as such, they've been taken over by brigands, etc., etc. No, I completely disagree with that position. If you look, for example, at the National Assembly elections for this last general election cycle, most of the people that are currently in the National Assembly are new people. By almost 70%, we have new people in the National Assembly. That's the Senate and the House of Representatives. How do you have such high turnover if the laws are not, the INEC is not working properly? And then if you see the distinction of even state organizations divided into north, central, and south, all across the federation, it creates a balance where the candidate comes from one side, his deputy comes from the other, and then they have the middle ground as one of the senatorial zones where they battle for. So I don't agree that INEC has done woefully. No, that would not be my own assessment in any case at all.
Okay, Ahmed, you still have the floor, but let's look at what you said. You don't agree that INEC has not improved, but let's look at the beavers. Let's look at the technological equipment used by INEC. Let's look at the hitches that we've also noticed in the process. Let's also look at the deficits of trust that the people seem to have for INEC going through the general elections, presidential elections, and of course the off-cycle elections in Edo and of course Ondo State. We always see huge number of millions of registered voters, but at the end of the day, there's a huge number of voter apathy. The number of persons that come out to vote seem not to reflect even 50% of the voters that have been registered. What do you see as a causing factor for this, and how can we mitigate?
So, Philip, I don't know where you get your figures from, but from the figures that I have been privileged to study, if you look at the voters card as a tool for identification itself in Nigeria, that's probably one of the only means of identification that is almost free to obtain. So it is widely accepted as a means of identification, number one. Number two, when you put that concurrently with the fact that it is a means of identification, which is also the voter's card, you look at the numbers of the people that are actually registered. When they put out that number last year, we only got about maybe 30 or 40% of that number to come out to vote. So the figures that you are saying are completely at variance with what is being put out in the public space. Take, for example, Edo State. We have probably a population of going in between approximately between 3, 4, 5 million. And then look at the result of the last election, where only about a fraction of that number came out to vote. The numbers that came out to vote are far below the number of registered voters. And so those figures that you are saying are not entirely correct. So now let us even address voter apathy. Yes, there is voter apathy. But what we have seen that has been steadily increasing because INEC has put in place a robust system to resist rigging, outright rigging. Now you have voter inducement as the primary source of manipulating elections. No more rigging per se. There is rigging, but it has reduced to the point where it will not sway the election one way or the other. By and large, you have the will of the people. You always have losers come out to say the election didn't favor them one way or the other. But the turnout of the numbers, look at, for example, Lagos State in the last election, the last presidential election. Lagos State went against the incumbent president. There's no politician who is going to be able to say, I did not come and deliver my state for myself. But that's what happened in the last election because the people came out in their numbers and they voted in a different way. If you go down and then you look at if you narrow it down, you will find out for even at the National Assembly level, some of those figures illustrated that voters went against what people are saying happened. So I would not agree that INEC has failed in that regard. I would say that people need to narrow down, they need to zero in on these numbers and study them properly, and then come out with a balanced view of what exactly is going on.
Thank you, Ahmed Mamado. But if I got you right, you seem to told my opinion. What I said earlier when I said that a huge number of voters are registered. But when it comes to those who come out to vote, it's quite not even up to 50% of the number of registered voters. And you seem to have concurred on that. And so You seem to
100%
told
yes.
what I
I
said.
agree with you. I agree absolutely. You're absolutely right in that regard, Philip. I agree with you completely.
That's my point. That's the point I made.
Yes, I
Okay,
agree with you in that regard.
let's get your view, Chris. We have this voter apathy increasing, and a lot have been said that we can't treat INEC in isolation, but the political class. And again, if we look at vote buying, for instance, it cut across the entire political parties, or it cut across major political parties in Nigeria, which seem to give the impression that even the political class are not helping matters.
All right. It depends on what analysis you want to do. If you want to analyze Nigeria's electoral process that involves all the agencies, the political parties, the INEC, the police, and all of that, that's fine. If you are looking at an institution, because you see, this question of giving credit or accepting assets but outsourcing liability is not in my DNA. If you are taking assets, you should be taking liabilities. If every problem we have in Nigeria with generalized analysis, nobody's ever going to take the blame. It's like everybody's job which nobody did. If we have an institution, that institution should be responsible for its mandate. There is a law setting it up. There's a law backing it constitutionally, statutorily, and there is vote allocated to it. So it takes the blame and it takes the credit.
For the conduct of the political class?
Yes, for the conduct of the elections. Because you see, INEC occupies the place of the judiciary in the electoral process, where it is the buck stops at the table of INEC.
But I'm looking at the challenges that even the political class brings to INEC.
Yes, certainly.
Which,
that's why I say if you want to do that, if you want to do that analysis, that's fine. But I will start from INEC. If after you have done all you want to do outside as the political class, the officials on the table will not let you get away with whatever you want to do. They insist on the process, and then the results are reflected. Then whatever the political class does belongs to the political class. They take the blame for that. But if the political class is always able to influence you, then you are useless. You no longer have any reason to exist. If you are always able to be influenced by whatever other shenanigans any other group or any other class or any other participant in the election does, you become absolutely useless. You are redundant. So I would like to have Mahmoud Yakubu say, look, this is what my officials gave me. This is the result. The political class is trying to manipulate it and putting in my resignation. Those are the kind of people that change system. So if we begin to outsource blames from INEC to other institutions or to other agencies or participants in the election, we will never be able to hold anybody responsible for anything. INEC is responsible for the results. And that brings me to what Ahmed said. I agree with him mostly. But I wanted Ahmed to let me know, I don't know if he monitored the last Edo election. The only source he would have to monitor the Edo election is through the INEC result viewing portal, because it's in the United States. Now, it will be interesting for us here if Ahmed will tell us what he saw in the IREF as against what result was announced later by the resident electoral commissioner in Edo State. At least I know that we have people in the US, Germany, and everybody saw the results where they were. Now, what was in the IREF, was that what was announced? If that is not what was announced, and that's just a recent election of September, if as late as September, INEC can still not reconcile his announced result and the result in the IREF portal, then INEC has a serious problem, because it is what you deliver as output at the end of the day that matters in all of this. It doesn't matter what money have gone into reforming you and what laws of reformation have been put there in the electoral process. It is what you deliver eventually as output at the end of the day. So if we have right now we're in court, the PDP is in court, to challenge an election that is based on at least three copies of results released by INEC. There's a CTC copy different from the one on the IREF, different from the one announced by the REC, the Edo State REC. These are facts. These are facts that civil society have brought to the public. In fact, TAP initiative is in ICPC now. These are facts, and they are all coming from IREC's table. This is nothing to do with politicians right now. This is nothing to do with the police. The politicians might have been flexible, but IREC is colluding. IREC's results, that's IREC's integrity. not the politician's integrity. So the point we are making is that if the institution would say no to the activities of the politicians and then come out and say, look, this is my responsibility and this is what I tried to do. And then we have had people like that. There was a woman who conducted the Lesotho governorship election, the REC of Abia State. She came out and said, look, I'm not taking any inducement. I'm going to announce the results the way that it is. We're not giving that woman any national honor. She didn't get any MFR or OFN. But those are the kind of people we're talking about that will change the institutions, except we just want to keep it as a talking point, year in, year out. INEC should take responsibility. And if it's not ready to take responsibility, then we should begin to do something about it. And that's why I agree with the former president that we have to review the leadership. So the point is, we have put in place an electoral process backed by law. Civil society came out, ensured that there was an electoral reform. Buhari refused to sign. He was put under pressure. The thing went to him almost like 5 times and he signed eventually. Signing into law an electoral reform process. And the BIVA was introduced, IRF was introduced. And the IRF is giving us a result different from what you are announcing, different from the CTC copy. And that's from INEC. So INEC cannot be shielded. They have to be the one that will come out to say, look, this is what is influencing us. We're not to play the devil's advocate for INEC. For instance, in Edo State, the influence of the lions and tiger did not happen on election day. The influence of the lions and tiger happened pre-election. The fear-mongering they created in the society did not happen on the election day because we have 35,000 policemen on the streets of Edo and we have military officers on the streets of Edo. So Edo people went to vote. Now, but the activities pre that one, I mean, how did that influence INEC? How did that influence the voters? How did that influence the result that was produced? Okay. So INEC has a chunk of its responsibility to take and the blame to take for what they do.
Thank you. I believe Ahmed Momodu must have taken that down so that he can react to that. But before the pendulum comes to you, let's get your thoughts, Roy, over these electronic devices. We have the BVAS and, of course, the transmission of results on IRF. Do you see this as improvement so far in the electoral process?
I think we also know what is the position of the law in regards to BVAS, IRF. I think those are my concern. You know, when you are reforming, restructuring a system, you must do it holistically. You know, I look at there was a serious lacuna in the last electoral reform process. And that's the reason why some of us were not comfortable, because the issue of those electronics means was not captured properly in terms of the laws. And that's the reason why you go to court, they will tell you to go to court. It's happened on a daily basis. Go to court, electoral matter, go to court. Because they are aware that there is a serious lacuna, and it takes a man of integrity to prove and also take responsibility. You know, that goes back to my position, where you are looking at, you are talking about people with integrity. And I said, what hustlers are in position? Hustlers. You know, you have to be, in a society that is working, like my friend Ahmed, who is talking from the US now, no matter how strong you are, the US system does not allow a hustler to preside over them. They'll take you back and tell you where you are coming from. They are looking for men with integrity because the institutions are working. In Nigeria, institutions are not working. I'm one of those who have become money that we need to strengthen our institutions. One superhuman being cannot make things to work until we have that institution that you and I will be proud. As of today, we have seen jettisoning our values. The value system has since collapsed. Integrity and transparency, they are on vacation. What are you going to be? What can you say? And the level of hunger, frustration, and hardship is unprecedented. How many persons will have that capacity? How many persons will have what it takes to say, you cannot infame me? We just talked about this woman from Abia State, a very exceptional woman. Till date, I've been monitoring her to find out how many persons have considered it wise to go and give her an award. No persons. I have not been able to see where the woman has been recognized. But those who are the Hallelujah boys, they are busy collecting award from one angle or the other. And that is the society we are building for our children. These are the issues we must look at. And that's the reason I keep on maintaining that we must look at the issue holistically.
Yes, look at the issue holistically. You remember before we had the BVAS before we had the transmission of results on IRF, you've always also agitated that we should move electronically.
Of course.
And now we've moved electronically. Are
Yes.
you not appreciating that level? Or are you saying that though we've moved to this point, is this subject to human manipulation?
It's not even about manipulation. I'm asking the position of the law in regards to using the electronic message to transfer election, transmission of results. What is the position of the law?
Okay.
Those are my issue. I'm happy
I think Matthew should tackle that aspect.
When you critically look at it, you find out that the ruling elites, they deliberately played those sectors so that there would not be a legal backing to transmission of results electrically, and that is electronically, and that is the reason why some of us are scared. And it's a deliberate formation from them to place a caveat, if not a lacuna, so that you will not be able to pursue into a logical conclusion. Now we are discussing, do we need to even be discussing again about how election, those state elections, what we naturally, with what you are seeing in IRF, you should be able to do your minus, addition, and supply.
Okay.
I just said in America, now we were here. I was here in Benin, in my room. I just woke up and I said, okay, let me monitor what's going on. I was monitoring and everybody was seeing. You see the result is dropping and you see what you are getting. People are monitoring. How come it cannot happen in Nigeria? Once you get to that level, there must be an issue. And that issue is the issue that keep on taking us back.
Okay,
the reason my position I'm maintaining is that we cannot be discussing INEC in isolation. The reason is that what have we subscribed to as a people? Because those values that hitherto bind us together is so not God there. And that is my fear about society.
Let's tackle the aspect of the electoral laws. And to you, Matthew Idagese, I believe you heard what Roy said. Now, let's look at the electoral laws. How functional are they? How effective are they in closing the gap or in making sure that, results that are transmitted are really seen? Like he drew an analogy of developed polity like the American elections, for instance, where you can follow through. You can easily say, okay, this candidate is leading, and it goes through to the point where you can easily predict that this will be the winner of the election, and it follows through. According to him, he said back home in Nigeria is the opposite. So are you seeing setbacks in our electoral laws? What have we not been doing? Or is it a deliberate act by the leaders or the political class to perpetually keep our laws from being effective to capture this and close the gap?
Coming to the electoral reform and the functionalities of the law as in ensuring that is effect in the outcome of every election. We should not forget that the law is what the judges say it is. There has been several pronouncements on electoral results, litigations that was brought before them. There are judicial precedents to the effect that IRF transmission of result through IRF it's not a final whatever seal on the credibility of the outcome of announced result. This was proven severally. Even in the case of Obi, a lot of argument was made by the petitioners on IRF and all of that, the discrepancy in the IRF result. But what was the outcome? The court laid down it. They downplay the effect of IRF result, transmission of election result to IRF. So if that is the Supreme Court decision as it stands, I do not know where anybody will approach the court again and expect that precedent not to be re-echoed. That is the challenge there.
So we have a setback in that regard.
Yes, having the law is one thing. But when you have a judicial precedent from the final court of the land, it becomes a problem when you want to challenge it against that tide. You can't still against the tide.
Are you saying there's nothing that can be done to run through?
It has to be brought back to the parliament for fresh legislation so that it will become expressly pronounced, enacted in those laws that unless the result is produced by INEC, IRF, And so INEC is the determinant of the final pronouncement. Then we remember where we are. We cannot wish it.
If we bring it back to the legislature or to the parliament, do you see the present parliament or administration as having the political will to do justice to that? Because don't forget, we have 2027 forthcoming.
That situation. Like Roy said earlier on, you do not expect people who are profiting from a system to alter it against their interests. That is the challenge.
Thank you very much, Matthew Edarese. Let's get back to you, Ahmed. You've heard the buzzballs all over. Let's get your reactions. And basically, I know you want to react to what Christopher Ejekere said. And I don't know if you have a first-hand information about how the off-cycle elections transpired in Edo State.
Oh yes, I do have first-hand information
Okay,
on how it
ventilate.
transpired in Edo State. And can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
So the idea that somehow PDP won the election and it has been robbed of a victory, I'm not even sure where that comes from. But the matter of fact is that INEC has created a double redundancy system. Now, just to be clear, let's roll back a little bit. The double redundancy system that INEC has created is unique in its creation among electoral commissions all over the world. When you say double redundancy, what is that? At the basis level, at the unit, the results must be collated at the unit, agreed to by all the principal participants or their agents before it goes to the ward, before it goes to the local government level, and then the state level, and to the national level. Now, at the point of the unit, that is where any discrepancy is supposed to be highlighted by either the participant or their agents. The electoral law gives the power to the agents or the participants to controvert whatever results they find to be different from what is on ground. As it builds up and then it gathers momentum, you will see that by bringing the power from the units all the way to the top, it removes marginally, not completely, marginally, room for malfeasance and distortion of the will of the people. So the idea somehow that people are voting and their will is being disbanded, I completely disagree with that. The facts do not speak to that. Rigging, like I said, has been more or less removed to the point where now, when we're talking about, one of the gentlemen was talking about electoral violence. The reason why electoral violence has been reduced to almost a negligible level is because INEC came out and said, look, wherever there is violence, wherever there is stealing of ballot papers or the box is moved, the result in that unit will be cancelled. INEC came out and said we have zero tolerance for violence, we have zero tolerance for malfeasance, etc., etc. And this was given power by the Electoral Act. Now, the politicians have found out that rather than have the results nullified by INEC, they would do their best to influence the will of the voters. That's what I told you before. The rigging has been brought to a manageable point where the issue we now have is voter inducement. They are two very different things. Voter inducement is where you actually bring people to participate in the process, but you have already given them a predetermined answer. Now, if the argument is that there are so many people that are induced as to make the result of the elections incorrect to the will of the people, that is a different argument entirely. But that INEC is not performing its role to the extent that INEC is not a law enforcement agency, some of those other responsibilities are farmed out to INEC, and INEC has its own rules clearly spelled out in the Constitution. When we talk about IREV and all the rest of those things, like the other gentleman said, the lawyer said, he said it very clearly. The Supreme Court has come out and made the pronouncement that as far as the the law is concerned, it does not recognize that as the final arbiter of the votes cast. What does it recognize? It recognizes the paper blocks. We keep referring to the American system as a system that needs to be copied. America is not a democracy. The idea that America is a democracy is completely lost on people that do not study the system of America. The idea that America is the ethical balance of the world is completely lost on people that do not realize that America just voted somebody who has been convicted of crimes that you will not even be able to use to get a job in America if you are a normal person. America has become the symbol of everything that is wrong with a democratic system. And anybody that studies it and looks at the system and knows exactly what is going on will tell you precisely what I have told you. The result of the last American election is a shame. It's a shame that somebody is going to the White House that has been convicted of crimes in lower courts. And if you had those crimes in your record in America, you will not be able to get a job. That's the person that they want to send to become the president. So let's put aside the American system for a time. Let us take what is good about our own electoral system, remove the things that are bad. But I insist once again that by and large, the results of all of these elections have shown the will of the people to a great degree, to a very great degree that is completely, is not negligible.
Thank you, Ahmed. But let's quickly, you still have the floor. In 2 minutes, I want your response as regards the will of the political class as we speak under the leadership of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. You know, the politicians have a way of always looking at the next election. Now, the president, you know, in the person of Ahmed Bola Tinubu, won the election in 2023, and he was sworn in. And there is this attention on 2027, even when we are not done with 2024, 2025, and of course 2026 budget. But they are looking at 2027. Now, do you see the political will under the present administration as canvassed by the legal practitioner, where he said that there seemed not to be, you know, an attempt by the political class to make sure that our electoral laws are effective, to bring a change narrative in our electoral process because they benefit from the process. So could you also say or concur that the political class may not want to, you know, improve on the electoral laws just now because they want to also use it, you know, to benefit themselves in power in 2027?
I completely agree with that position. I agree with the position that, of course, the players and the beneficiaries of a system that is flawed will definitely not be the ones that want to change it. However, a certain amount of kudos must be given not just to the participants, but to the umpire. When you say that the results that you are getting are not reflective of the will of the people, then you are going to a different realm entirely. A lot of the people that lost the elections, the last round of elections, let me come back again to the National Assembly and let this be an impact. Let this be a statement that I want anybody that is there to controvert. It's very simple. Normally, we see a cycle where outgoing governors are automatically elected into the Senate and the House. Well, not the House of Representatives, the Senate directly. Cast your mind back to the last election. How many of the outgoing governors are currently senators in the Federal Republic? Almost negligible number, not up to 10%. This is because there are people who refused to put them. There are people who refused to endorse them. And the system did not allow them to manipulate it to the point where they could get their will. Look at Benue. Is Benue State Governor in National Assembly? Count them off one by one. How many of them made it to the National Assembly? That is an indication that the people's voice is coming through. It might be gradual, it might be something that will take time, but let us focus on the things that are positive. Let us not keep harping on the negative things. A lot of good has come. INEC has done substantially well, thinking about where we came from in 1999 to where we are. And we must keep on pushing our political elite to follow the voice of the people. They will be reluctant, but we must keep on pushing them.
Thank you, Ahmed. Well, let's get your contribution in this regard in order to navigate through as we round up. But don't forget, some have said that, you know, it's even in the provision of the Constitution that any party that is aggrieved over the announcement of the election results should go to court.
Yeah.
And so if the president said it, he only spelled out the constitutional provision. I basically know, like you said earlier, the PDP is in court over the election that transpired. But do you see pulling through in all of this? Because we look at the electoral laws, for instance. Are you also scared, or do you feel that you have grouses with the electoral laws, that may be used, against the performance of the party?
Well, let me start with where Ahmed started, where he tried to emphasize the supremacy of the result at the polling units. And to also re-emphasize that is why INEC insisted in their electoral guidelines that INEC officials must upload results from the polling unit. And it is those results that go to the IREV. So maybe when he comes around again, he would answer the question I had asked earlier. Did he collate those results in the IREV? Results which were uploaded from the polling unit, and what result did he get? The result he got in the US, is it consistent with the result that was announced and consistent with the CTC? You see, the matter we are discussing is a moral question. And if you come to equity, you must come with clean hands.
Okay.
So it's a
let's quickly get Ahmed.
Yes.
Let's quickly get Ahmed. Ahmed, please, you heard what he said. Can you react to that, Ahmed?
So I think we've established from the lawyer that has graced us kindly that the position of the law is not the IREV. The position of the law would be, for the sake of this argument, between the CTC and what he claims was announced. Now, like the law says, if you have any discrepancy between these two, take these matters and go to court, and then the court will now interpret, and we have to wait for the judgment of the court. The IREV is not the final arbiter of what is on ground.
Thank you. Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you. You've established your point. IREV is not the final. Okay, but you've established a point.
Okay, so now I'm happy he has no opinion. He's waiting for the court's opinion. But I'm telling him now that he should ask his colleague in the US. Everybody saw that supremacy of the unit result which he referred to and did their calculation. And the calculation in the IREF, the PDP won the election. The announcement in Edo State is different from what is in the IREF, and the CTC copy, also from the same INEC, is different.
I think the court will attend to that.
Yes, no, those are
because it's a constitutional provision that any party that is agreed to go to court.
Yes, let me also
let's follow that through.
Your second point,
yeah,
which is that it was the president who said go to court. It wasn't the president, it was Mahmoud Yakubu, when he was challenged over the result he was about to announce in 2023. That said, if you are not satisfied, go to court.
But that's a provision of the Constitution.
Yes, so I'm saying that the court is supposed to arbitrate on, when you have disputes. So there's no problem with saying go to court.
Okay.
I'm saying what you are taking to court is a moral question for us here to discuss, because we are not lawyers. We are not in the court now. So morality demands that you speak truth.
Okay, but do you have faith in the court system of Nigeria?
I have absolute faith. That's why I support the going to court.
Okay.
I also have faith.
So whatever judgment
Peter Obi, for instance, that we are all citing, won several of his cases in court. So we have not reached the end yet. Beware the Ides of March. Then when he got to the Ides of March, he said the Ides of March is come. He said, yes, Caesar, but not gone.
Okay.
So the Ides of March is not gone.
Okay, your final remarks.
Just come. Yeah, so my final remarks is this. If we are going to change the system, we must all come to equity with clean hands.
Okay.
And that speak truth to power.
All right.
If the result in IREV is different from the result announced, we should say so.
Okay.
We should not say the court will determine what has been announced and in the public space.
Big thanks.
And the CTC is different from what is, announced. So until we begin, we can't say we change. You were asking me who will change the system.
Thank you. That's
what we by speaking the truth.
Thank you. Big thanks for making our time to be part of this, Christopher. Big thanks, Roy, and big thanks to our analyst Vazum, Matthew Adarese, and of course Ahmed Mamadou. This will call it up on the conversation at the Benin Network Center.